Hello, and welcome to Life with Francie podcast, a place where you will find all types of conversations of mental health, self love, self care, trauma, hobbies, and more. With this podcast, I want to create a community where we support one another in business and personal life. Hope you enjoy this episode. Now, let's get the show started. On today's episode, I have the pleasure to talk to Emily. We found each other through Woman in Podcasting, a great community that Jennifer Hensel created, where she helps women grow, and monetize their podcast. So come and check it out. I have an event of powered networking for podcasters every third Thursday of each month in that community. But now let's get to know about Emily. And Emily is was a long time people pleaser, box checker, and high achiever. uh, Emily was at her dream job, benefits, flexible hours, incredible coworkers, living the dream. uh, and then she knew that she was meant for something different and started trying to figure out what that was, even if it was involved leaving said this cushy job to start her own business. So let's get to know Emily. So hi Emily, what is life with
Hello.
you?
What is life with me? What a $1,000,000 question. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for having me, and so grateful for the power of the internet to bring together women who are pursuing their passions, whether podcasting or beyond.
Yes.
Yeah, that's been just really such a huge part of what my journey was look like, is just connecting with the right people online and finding the commonalities in our stories and growing together. So my name is Emily Reuschel. I live on my husband's family farm up here in West Central Illinois. I did not grow up in agriculture. I grew up in what I thought was a small town in Southern Illinois, but really I was 15 minutes from downtown St. Louis. So really thought I was pretty cool and pretty connected to agriculture. And then I met a farmer, and farms don't move, so people do. So I found myself up here on the family farm, about 45 minutes away from where we go to get groceries, as a brand new farm wife that, I definitely thought I knew what was in store for that. But wow, have I learned some lessons in the past 7 or so years of being here. Anyway, professionally, I started as an elementary school teacher. And how cute is that, right? The teacher and the farmer, like, we're just gonna be like all American little small town couple. So cute.
I love that for you.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I thought for sure I would be teaching in the same classroom for the rest of my career. And actually, when we moved back up here, the classroom that I took over had been for many decades belonged to one of his family members. So everything already said Mrs. Reuschel on it. And I'm like, oh, this is perfect. I've made it. And I love teaching. I was really good at it. And like I said, I thought that was the trajectory of my life. But I got pregnant 11 days after moving back to the farm and had my son in March, in my first year of teaching up here. I had taught previously at another school district, but had my son in March. My maternity leave went into the summer. And about early July or so, I happened to be scrolling Facebook in my parents' house and see an ad from the local YMCA. It's about 25 minutes away from our house, and they were advertising for a program director position. And I'm like, well, I never thought I would leave teaching, but that sounds like something I need to do. Like, I can't even explain anything other than it had to have been like a God moment or divine intervention or something, because it was like full body chills. Like, I have no idea what I'm stepping into, but ready, set, go. So I applied, interview, got the job, had to tell my superintendent like a week or two before school was starting that I wasn't coming back. So I spent 4 years at our local YMCA, and of course, I was hired to do summer camp and after school and youth and family special events, which was all very much within my wheelhouse. Obviously, I had been a teacher. I had spent every summer of my life in summer camp to some capacity, either as a camper, counselor, director, something like that. And so I really thrived in that part of my job. I totally knew what was expected of me. But being a small rural branch, I also got thrown into having to understand what it was like to run a budget and market for events and fundraise and really run, this nonprofit like a business. And I had no previous experience with that. And I'm so grateful for the professional growth opportunities that I was able to receive in that position that helped me start to think about the world in a bigger way, help me start to dream a vision for my life that was different than what I had ever expected. Like I said, I expected farmer and the teacher, and we'll raise our kids in the farm and it will be great. About halfway through my time at the Y, I had our second child, my daughter, and I was 6 months postpartum, which anyone who has had babies knows that that's a wild ride, having a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old. And I went back to work the day we started summer camp that year. So I was working like 60-hour weeks. I had over 100 campers, 15 staff. I was pumping like 8 times a day. Am I allowed to talk about that here? Talk about
Wow,
pumping?
girl. Oh yeah, you can talk about
Yeah.
anything in here.
Okay,
I am
perfect.
loving it.
Perfect. And I just had this moment where I woke up and I was like, WTF, like I am exhausted. I am barely running on fumes, if that. I have this new baby. I have this 2-year-old. I have this career that I love that I've fully thrown myself back into. Like, what am I doing for me? Like, I don't like the way I'm showing up. I'm exhausted all the time. I'm borderline angry. Like, what happened? I don't like the way I feel in my body. Like, and it only minimally had something to do with the way I looked. By that point, like I've had 2 kids, like, that train has sailed, but I feel awful. So I started a health journey. And from the beginning was like, this has to be different than anything we've ever done before. I grew up in the 90s and the 2000s, which was like diet culture run rampant. And I'm like, I don't care about dieting. I'm not interested in ellipticaling myself into a certain pant size. I was like, I just have to feel different than I do right now. So by, again, like divine intervention, I happened to start this health journey, and through the power of the internet, discover this thing called personal development, and started following all of these teachers and leaders who really talked about goal setting and prioritizing your self-care and mental health and building strong habits and the power of community and doing things you never thought were possible. And it was like, oh my gosh, this whole new world was open up to me. And I went from, to make a long story short, I went from being literally the opposite of a runner to running a half marathon in 6 months, something that I would have never identified with. I was not an athlete in
Wow.
high school. I was like band kid, Girl Scouts, all that stuff. Like I'm not one of those people that was like running cross country. No. So I just really opened this door for, I can do anything. Like the world has been open. I have proven to myself that I can show up for myself and anything is possible. So a little while after I kind of walked through this really profound health journey, the world turned upside down as it did in 2020. And it was a little bit into the summer that I had started following all of these accounts online, like I said, in the personal development space, but then also in the like women in agriculture, farm wife, farm mom kind of space, because I had some really great friends from, college era times, but none of them were on farms or like really understand the depths of what it was like to be a mom in production agriculture. And so I've started following all these farm accounts and all these personal development accounts. And at the time, I didn't really see any intersection between the two. And I'm like, there has got to be another woman in a rural community that gets excited about reading personal growth books or wants to talk about what podcasts they're listening to or gentle parenting or, what it means to set goals or running, things like that. And so I kind of had this moment, and I feel like I'm just describing a series of moments where I was like driving home at sunset, like how cliche. And it was like, well, why not me? Like, why can't I be that person? And I had never used the internet for anything other than, posting pictures from nights out in college or, then pictures of my babies on Instagram. But it was at that time I started an entirely separate Instagram account. At the time I called it Raising Reuschel. Raising being like, here we are out here raising animals and crops and babies, and most importantly, myself and the women around me. Like community has always been so important to me, and genuine community over competition has, just been one of my more core values for a long time. So I took a lot of really messy action in figuring out this, like, I guess what you would call influencer world, starting from scratch. And, to make a long story short, one thing led to another. And the people I got connected with grew, and I kept putting myself in situations to meet with more women who were in rural communities who were interested in the things that I was. And a little over a year later, I happened to go to a retreat that was intended for like rural women, and teaching them to kind of use things like Instagram to monetize or whatever. And it was at that point that I realized I could be building a business based on the things that I love. Like I have what it takes inside me to pursue my dreams, and even self-realize what some of those dreams even were. And so I went back to the Y the very next day and told my boss that I was leaving. And it's kind of funny. Yesterday I had the opportunity to speak to a local CEO program. It's like an entrepreneur kind of club class for high school students. And I'm like, you guys have better business plans right now than I did. Like I did not have a business plan. I was just like, I see a vision and I'm going to step into it. And I have no idea what this looks like, but I'm going to take some messy as heck action to bring it to life. So I stayed at the Y about 2 months longer. We were right in the middle of summer camp, and I just couldn't let my team down. I had to see it through with them. And then I stepped straight into the unknown in September of, gosh, aren't all the years running together? September,
Yeah.
September of 2021. Oh my gosh. Can you hear that? Oh,
No.
that was so loud. I got like a Facebook message. You never get Facebook messages. Um, edit that part out or don't. I don't
No, it didn't. It didn't sound.
care. Okay. Anyway, September of 21, I took a leap into the unknown, and like I said, took a lot of messy action. And now what I have done over the past year and some change, year and a half almost, is I launched a podcast. It's called Gather and Growth. It's all about bringing people, specifically rural women, together for the intention of personal and professional growth. I launched a website, which was, wow, I don't know anything about that. That was a lot of work. And now I travel across the country to speak and share my story, empower other women in agriculture and rural communities to get clear on what they actually want. So often we're living into the expectations that someone else has for our life and not really fully stepping into our potential. So I'm really passionate about speaking on that. I facilitate small group mastermind groups with women from rural communities. I can't even just say across the nation, because in Canada and Mexico as well. And this past November, I hosted my first in-person retreat. I have another coming up in March. And yeah, that's a little bit of the summary professionally of just who I am and where I've been, but it's been quite the ride.
Oh my goodness. Yes, girl, you do it all and some more. How do you find the energy?
That's a really great question. And actually, on the topic of mental health, something I've been talking to my therapist about. The end of last year, last year was an incredible year. I brought so many things to life that I had dreamed of. But what I didn't have awareness of the beginning of the year of what kind of energy that was going to take. And I'm not necessarily what one would call a planner. I'm more like, I have an idea and I'm just going to jump in with 2 feet without thinking about what all the steps it's going to take to get there, which is awesome in a lot of ways. And I'm so proud of what I did. But what I didn't realize is how many of those projects were all going to accumulate at the same time. Like in July of last year, I was working on launching my podcast. I was working on selling my first retreat. I was in the thick of getting my website put together. I was doing some major brand overhaul of a habit challenge I facilitate called UDU82. What else? I feel like there was something else on top of just like the regular day to day. I was hosting 6 masterminds at the time and just trying to create content, all the things. And I got done with that. And it was like a pretty quick downward spiral, like mentally of, wow, that was so much. And again, things that I was very proud of. But the interesting thing about entrepreneurship that I learned last year, as opposed to when I worked for someone else, is like when it's you versus you, it's all on you. And there were habits that I had built throughout my professional life that are a lot easier to hide when you're working for someone else. Like I'm a natural procrastinator. Like I said, not the best game planner. But when you have someone else's expectations that you know that you have to meet, like or you have a team of people that you're working with, you can kind of play on each other and work together and hold each other accountable. Well, when it was all me versus me, it really started bringing out this awareness of some of those habits. And then a lot of like insecurities and just stuff from my past really started to present itself. And I'm so proud of the personal growth journey that I had been on that had gotten me to that point. But I realized, wow, there's some really deep rooted stuff from my life, from my childhood, that I have never really dealt with. And now is starting to catch up to me. And this is going to be the bottleneck that prevents me from moving forward, both professionally and personally. So in about October, I got to this point that I'm like, I am not okay. Nothing feels right. And in one afternoon, I got connected with a therapist. I booked a functional health appointment and I hired a housekeeper and found a copywriter all the same day because I
Wow.
was just like, I cannot feel like this anymore. Like something is not right. So I started therapy, got connected with a functional health person, and came to find out I was like massively deficient in progesterone, iron, vitamin B12, D, and magnesium. And she was like, I actually don't know how you're functioning or sleeping. Like, this is not normal. And it was so validating. Like, oh, like, okay, thank you. So I started supplements on that. And, I've been in therapy for several months now. And it's like, I have a brain in my head again. This is so, so nice. But to answer your original question on the energy is I didn't. I completely expelled every ounce of energy that I had. And I had almost gotten to the point that, I didn't have the energy for my life anymore. And so I don't necessarily regret it. I wouldn't change it because I think it's lessons to learn. But looking at 2023, I'm like, okay, I got to be careful what I wish for, because if there's anything I learned last year, anything that I speak out loud that I want to be true, I can make happen. But what do I actually want this year to look like? Like, where do I want to spend my energy? What is the intersection between these dreams that I have and this impact that I want to make in this community that I'm building? And also all of these other pieces of my life. Because that's what it really comes down to. So often we're chasing all of these things that either we create ourselves or that other people expect of us or tell us is going to make us happy. And we have this moment where we wake up and we're like, life is good. All of these things are good. Everything is working out for me, but something's not right. I don't feel right. I don't feel like this is where I'm meant to be, which can be really scary because we've checked all the boxes. We've done all the things. We've got the gold stars. We've got the achievements, but now what? And so what I like to, ask the women I work with is like, what do you actually want? When you think about an average Tuesday, I'm not talking about like the pinnacle moment, because that's easy for us to dream of. Oh, once I write the book, or once I run the marathon, or once I start the business, things will be great. But like when you wake up on an average Tuesday morning, what do you want to be doing with your time? What do your values look like? How do you want to spend your hours? And I think that's a much harder question, because it's one thing to say, I want to write a book. It's another thing to wake up every day and write. It's another day. It's one thing to say, oh, I would love to have this kind of body. And it's another thing to get up and train every day. So what I continuously ask my community is like, what do you actually want? Like, let go of that vision for your life you thought you needed to have. Give yourself permission to evolve. You're a different person than when you chose your profession when you were 18 years old. Like, it's okay to let go of some of the things that served you really well in a season and understand that there's room to make space for something new. And that could be personally, professionally, health-wise, and relationships and whatnot. But that comes with a tremendous amount of bravery and audacity and letting go of our expectation that it has to be perfect or look a certain way.
Oh my gosh, yes, I'm stuck on give yourself permission to oh my gosh, and I just forgot it, to evolve.
Yeah.
Yes, because sometimes it's our environment or
Mm-hmm.
even ourselves, because we're like, who do we think we are? Where we come
Yeah.
from? And we're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to stay in this box. Why
Mm-hmm.
would we move over here? So I love that. Oh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's the thing that hold most people back from making any kind of change is, who am I? What are they going to think? What are they going to say? And it's a lot of times we're not even afraid to fail. We're afraid for people to watch us fail. We're afraid to be the topic of conversation. And the reality is, like, if someone's going to talk badly about you, they're going to do it no matter what you're doing. So you may as well be doing something cool. Give them, what's that song? Like, let's give them something to talk about. Like, and here's the other thing I know is when you are living in alignment with what your purpose is meant to be in the season. And I fully believe like our purpose can change and should change as we evolve. I really believe that my purpose was to be a teacher in the season that I was a teacher, but that's not necessarily what I'm meant to do now. In a lot of ways, I am still a teacher. Like all of those skills that I grew over a decade of working with kids and families and, being able to do all of that directly translates to the work that I'm doing now. I had a point that I was going with this. Oh, when you're so in alignment with what makes sense to you and you know that you're doing what makes sense for your heart and for your family, for your community, for yourself, like you kind of care a lot less what other people say because you're like, I'm good. I'm happy. I'm figuring it out. I'm trying it. I'm doing it. And if someone has something to say about what you're doing or is making comments about it, that's more on them than it is on you. That's shining a light on an insecurity that they have or a fear that they're projecting or something that you're bringing out that makes them jealous or afraid or anything like that. So I definitely relate to that. And I think that's a huge struggle that not even women, I think men too, but especially women face is, oh, what are they going to think? What are they going to say? Who am I to do this?
Oh no, yeah, 100%. I'm going through it right now. When this launch, it will be like a few weeks that I have launched my Patreon
Mm-hmm.
and my Patreon channel, and it's like I'm going through like, who do I think I am? Like
Mm-hmm.
trying to like people. I ask for people to support you or what? But
Mm-hmm.
like this girl right here, like what you explained of last year for you, it
Mm-hmm.
was kind of sort of the same for me in other
Yeah.
places because I'm a mail lady during the day, but a
Mm-hmm.
podcaster at night.
Yeah.
So last year I launched my podcast. I did 6 months of my own. And
Mm-hmm.
then by July, August, I was doing interviews.
Mm-hmm.
And then next thing you know, I have over 100 episodes on my podcast.
That's
And
amazing.
this is while working 12 hours, 6 days a week.
Wow.
So I was like, oh my gosh. So this year, I'm trying to cut back on the hours at work.
Mm-hmm.
Not working out. I already recorded one podcast interview, now recording this one, and hurry up to go and deliver mail on my day off. Whoop, whoop. So
Woohoo.
it's still, I'm still struggling with my job. And
Mm-hmm.
then I struggle with the part of you get a taste of the good life,
Mm-hmm.
but you still have this that you're
Mm-hmm.
working through it. But I
Yeah.
look at it as building skills and
Mm-hmm.
tools as I'm working into customer service. I go to
Mm-hmm.
your house. You don't even have to come to me. I go to your house every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like the training and things like that. And I just love how you did it and you helping others and not just doing one thing. Like you have the podcast, you
Mm-hmm.
have retreat
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. And I love it because it shows the possibilities of what other people can do.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had some people give me advice like, oh, you should just pick one thing and focus on it. Like you'll be more successful faster. And I'm like, that sounds like my nightmare. In therapy, I was recently diagnosed with ADHD and my whole life started to make sense. But it's like nothing I've ever done professionally. I've just been doing one thing. Even when I was a teacher, teachers do 8 million things all day, every day.
Yeah.
When I was at the Y, I had so many things happening at the same time that I was constantly managing. So I can't imagine a reality where I'm like just podcasting or just doing something else. So yeah, I mean, it definitely creates more chaos for myself, but I also think it's a little bit where I thrive.
I love it. For me, it was from childhood having 24 cousins. So
Wow.
they that's just one side of the family, and then I had another 20 to 30 cousins with my dad that took me in when I was one. So I have, like, it was like 5 to 10 kids at all times, 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
So your brain is like, it's here, it's there, having
Mm-hmm.
conversations.
Yeah.
And then learning to speak English in a different country because I was in Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
So I love chaos. So
Yeah.
I love that I get to build my own as
Yeah.
I'm doing the podcasting. And I love that you mentioned therapy. I have been on and off in therapy, and then I have had my mentor for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
But then last year when I got did the mental health evaluation,
Mm-hmm.
I was able to give myself grace,
Mm-hmm.
compassion, and a lot of understanding,
Mm-hmm.
because I was diagnosed with 7 mental health diagnoses. And I was like, well, girl, you didn't have to have them, all of them.
You're like, oh, gold star for me.
Way too many gold stars. Yeah, my one of my therapists called me a mental health overachiever.
You're like,
And
thank
I
you.
was
Thank
like,
you
yeah,
very
thank
much.
you, thank you. But like, it makes sense
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
everything that I was dealing with, and that's, I can't focus on one thing. It will stress me out. I
Mm-hmm.
am an opposite of you. I am. So if you follow me on social media, I carry a book bag
Mm-hmm.
with 2 or 3 planners and
Uh-huh.
at least 7 notebooks. And now this year I started a wall calendar because I am all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
I need to stay focused um on bringing the goals down, because I can't be like a squirrel and then be like, oh, shiny object, so I'm going over there.
Oh yeah, that is so me. And that's kind of one of my, when I think about my goals for this year, it's like putting some systems in place, having a little bit more forethought and planning. Because although last year worked really well, it was also, it was too much for me from a, like an
Oh
energy
yeah.
standpoint. So I'm like, okay, I did that. Very proud. But let's like rein it in, have a little bit more of a game plan in 23. But I think that's part of learning, no matter what you're doing, especially when you're starting something new. I remember even at the Y, my boss telling me, like, your first year in the job is you just learning every in and out of the job. And then after that, you do better. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I love that you are pursuing something that you're so passionate about while um like in tandem with your, I guess, 9 to 5, so to speak. Although if you're working 12 hours, it's much more than a 9 to 5.
Nine
As
to
my
nine.
Yes, as mine was as well. But I mean, that's what I did for a long time. And before I was really even running a business, is like, here's this work that I love and that I do and that I'm learning in and that gives me fulfillment and a paycheck. And then here's this like other project that I'm building that like gives me life and allows me to kind of grow this community and meet with people that I love. So I love that you're doing both. And I think that that's such powerful advice for someone who is considering trying something new. Is it doesn't have to be like a 180 tomorrow. You can start building new things or new habits, or, chipping away at the thing that's your dream right where you're at today. And that doesn't, it's not better, it's not worse. It's just where you're at. Like, you really need to honor what makes sense for you and your family. So I love that you're doing that.
Thank you. Is there anything else that you would like my listeners to know about you?
Oh gosh, where do we even begin? Yeah, no, I think, just you talking about mental health, that's been such a huge part of the last, I don't know, from October till now, is like recognizing that there's no magic qualification for why someone needs to go to therapy. And I would say before I started, I would say out loud, oh, therapy's for everyone. Everyone should go. But when it came to me making the phone call, I kept like discrediting myself, like, oh, I'm just making it up. There's nothing wrong. Like, I can handle this. Like, I don't need this. Like, who am I to think I should go to therapy? Right. And we just create all of these stories in our mind. If someone has it worse, I don't actually need that, blah, blah, blah. And gosh, within just the first session of being there, it was like this wave of relief of like, I'm so glad I did this. And not to say it's been an easy journey by any means. Like, the end of November and into December was really hard, because once we start unpacking trauma and reprocessing what that looks like and having realizations that we've never pieced together before in the way that they're impacting us now. That can be really hard, really, really hard. But the entire time, even in the depths of like, I don't even know how I'm going to get through today or function or be a mom, much less show up for this community, I held on to the fact of like, it's going to be better. And there's a tomorrow that feels better than this. And I can't go through this any other way than through. Or I don't want to, because I definitely could. Like, I have a lifetime of coping skills that taught me to just put my head down and work, or, say it's fine, or do these things that would falsely make me feel better. But I knew that true healing would come from sitting in it and walking through it and processing it and dealing with it. I hosted a goal getter workshop a couple of weeks ago, and someone said, if I'm busy enough, I don't have to feel my feelings. And I was like, wow, how many years did I do that? Wow. And the thing about entrepreneurship is it's forced me to be with myself enough that I have to feel my feelings. And I'm grateful, even though it's been really stinking hard. And so it's worth it. And so to anyone listening who is hearing me talk about therapy, or heard other people share their mental health, like, if you have any indication that you think that talking to someone would help you, it will. And there's no certain level of trauma you have to have, or certain possible diagnosis that you seek, or anything like that. I think a lot of times it's just really helpful for a professional to be able to ask us the right questions and help us process what we've been through. Because the reality is everyone's walking around with some element of trauma. And it might be the big T traumas that we think about. I had someone once describe like big T traumas and little T traumas, but there are a series of micro experiences that we all have throughout our life that impact the way that we show up in the world. And oftentimes we don't even necessarily make those connections until someone professionally helps us. And so it was like, wow, I didn't know that one comment from that one girl in middle school was like why I do this. Like, what? What? Like, I would have
Yeah.
never pieced that together. And it can be so liberating on the other side. So I think that's probably just something I will preach on the mountaintops forever now, is like, please, like, and I know one of the biggest questions I get in my DMs all the time, every time I start talking about my therapy journey, is like, how do you even find a therapist? Like, and it's unfortunately not easy. Because even if you find someone, there's this whole headache of insurance and all of that. And I just know there's a lot of roadblocks, or there can be, which is really unfortunate. And I hope that podcasts like this and conversations like what we're having help to propel our society and our country into making those resources more readily available, because they are so life-changing. And the more people are aware of themselves and what they're walking around with, and the more compassionate they have towards themselves, the more compassionate we are towards one another. So anyway, always here to share that piece of my story and offer any advice that I can, but fight for it because it's worth it.
Yes, amen to that. I really love that because it's true. And once again, like, knowledge is power.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it did for me.
Mm-hmm.
No, because I had a feeling, depression, anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
bipolar, and things like that. PTSD because of trauma, ADHD symptoms because of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So codependency. So like that stuff, but like once you have it, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, if I were to be my best friend, I will not treat her like I treat myself.
Oh my gosh. Amen to that. Amen to that. That's something my therapist and I've been working through. It's like, I am such a cheerleader for every person on the planet. Why am I so mean to myself? Like, I don't even want to be. Like, I know better, which is even more frustrating.
I know, right?
I literally teach women how to, be compassionate with themselves and love themselves through the journey. But like, sometimes it feels hypocritical for how much my brain doesn't let me do that. But,
Yeah,
I also have compassion that there are things that made me that way, and I'm doing the work to undo them. So,
I love that.
yeah. So life is a forever journey. There's never some destination where we're like, oh, I made it. Everything is perfect. there's
Oh
always
yeah.
curveballs and things to figure out and new parts of ourselves to explore. So I'm just grateful to exist in a time where we have the power of the internet and finding community no matter where we're at. Because gosh, I think about some of the things that I've been through, and I'm like, if I was living on this farm 100 years ago, what in the world would that have been like? Or even 50 years ago or 20 years ago? Um, so yeah, I mean, sure, social media can be bad for a lot of reasons, but it's been a blessing in my life. Some of my best friends I met on the internet. And it's got me to what I'm doing today professionally. So I'm really grateful.
Nice. So where can my listeners find you?
Absolutely. So it's pretty easy if you can figure out how to spell my last name. My name is Emily Reuschel, Emilyreuschel. My website is emilyreuschel.com. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as at Emily Reuschel. My podcast is called Gather and Growth. So maybe that's the easiest one for you to walk away with. But like I said, my heart and my passion is in serving rural women, but I have such a diverse audience, people who just really jive with my energy and the messages that I share. And I love that they get to see a firsthand perspective of what it's like to be a woman in modern agriculture. Because it is such a unique life that we live, and I'm proud to share our family's story and would love to connect with each of your listeners, no matter where they're at, and get to be friends because it's my favorite.
I love that. And I will have everything on the show notes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me
Uh,
today.
Thank you for coming on my show. I'm so excited. I really had a great time talking to you.
Me too. Me too. Thank you for doing what you're doing and empowering people to share their stories because that's really important.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. Hope you enjoyed this episode. You can find my podcast on every major platform and on YouTube as well. So, do your thing, like, subscribe, follow. Anyways, hope you have a blessed day.